What if the smartest thing in the sea could become invisible, change color, and solve puzzles, all at the same time? Meet the cuttlefish.
All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about one of the ocean's most bizarre and brilliant creatures, the cuttlefish. This animal is part living canvas, part alien intelligence, and we're going to break down just how it completely redefines what we thought was possible in the animal kingdom. An alien brain ocean artist. I mean, that's quite a description, right? But it's not just some flashing line. It really gets to the heart of what this creature is. Something whose mind and body work in ways that just seem to defy our normal understanding of life on Earth. Let's figure out what makes them so incredibly unique. Okay, so what is a cuttlefish really? Well, on paper, it's a cephalopod in the order of sepia. A close cousin to the octopus and the squid. But trust me, while they're in the same family, the cuttlefish is, well, it's in a league of its own, famous for this wild combination of smarts and some truly extraordinary biology. So before we jump into all the mind-bending stuff, let's just cover the basics. How do you even spot one of these things? What are the key features that make a cuttlefish a cuttlefish?
Okay, so take a look. The first thing you'll probably notice is its body. It's broad and kind of flat, really different from a squid's torpedo shape. And inside, it's got this totally unique internal shell called a cuttlebone. That's how it controls its buoyancy with such crazy precision. And those eyes, they've got these signature W-shaped pupils that give them this otherworldly, almost alien gaze. Add to that 8 arms for moving around and 2 hidden tentacles just waiting to strike, and you've got yourself a cuttlefish.
But honestly, as cool as all that is, the real magic of the cuttlefish is its skin. We're not just talking about a protective layer here. This is something else entirely. It's like a living, high-definition screen that can broadcast complex messages in the blink of an eye. Seriously, just try to picture a living, breathing HD screen. That is literally what we're talking about with cuttlefish skin. It's this incredible network of millions of tiny, pigment-filled cells, and every single one is wired directly to the brain. This allows for these instant, almost psychedelic changes in color and pattern. So how on earth does it work? Well, it all comes down to this amazing 3-layer system, and they all work together perfectly. You've got the top layer, the chromatophores. Those are the tiny sacs of color that can expand or shrink in a flash. Right below that, you have iridophores. Think of these as tiny iridescent mirrors that create those shimmering metallic sheens. And holding it all up is the base layer of leucophores, which provides a bright white canvas. All 3 together, that's what turns the cuttlefish into a living piece of art. So why go to all this biological trouble? What's the point of this incredible ability? Well, it turns out it's a Swiss Army knife for survival. They can use it for perfect, dynamic camouflage to vanish into any background. They can flash startling patterns to scare off predators. They can even create hypnotic displays to mesmerize their prey. And, maybe most amazingly, they use it to communicate with other cuttlefish during these really complex courtship rituals. And that brings us right to the cuttlefish as a hunter. All this biological artistry, it's not just for looks. It's a highly sophisticated toolkit designed for one primary purpose: catching dinner. All of these unique features sync up to make it an incredibly effective predator. Those W-shaped eyes, they can see polarized light. Now, what that means is they can spot things that are totally invisible to us, like camouflaged prey, just by seeing how light reflects off them. Then there's the cuttlebone, which lets them hover completely silently in the water, just like a submarine, waiting for that perfect moment. And when that moment comes, they strike with those powerful appendages. And when it comes to attacking, the cuttlefish basically has a 1-2 punch. It's got its 8 arms, right? Those are for up-close work, grappling, holding onto prey, moving things around. But the real weapons are its 2 tentacles. They stay tucked away
totally hidden until bam, they shoot out at lightning speed to snatch a crab or a shrimp from a distance. It's shockingly fast.
Okay, so think about it. To control this unbelievably complex body, this living screen of a skin, this precision hunter's toolkit, you're going to need some serious processing power. And that leads us to maybe the most shocking thing about the cuttlefish. Its mind. This is where things get really wild. For an invertebrate and an animal with no backbone, the cuttlefish has a ridiculously large brain. In fact, its brain-to-body size ratio is one of the biggest among all invertebrates. This isn't just a fun fact. That big brain is the engine behind its incredible intelligence. And you see the proof of this intelligence everywhere you look. Cuttlefish show really complex learning behaviors. They have both short-term and long-term memory. In lab settings, they'll solve little puzzles to get to a tasty snack. And they're absolute masters of mimicry. And I don't just mean with their skin, I mean with their actual behavior. And here is the absolute best example of just how clever they can be. Get this, a smaller male cuttlefish wants to mate, but there's a bigger, tougher rival male in the way. So what does he do? He pulls off this brilliant trick. On the side of his body that's facing the big rival, he displays the color patterns of a female, basically saying, "Nothing to see here, I'm just a lady." But on the other side, the one facing the female he actually wants to court, he shows off his normal, flashy male patterns. It's this incredible act of strategic deception. So, when you put it all together, a skin that's a language, eyes that see a world we can't, and a mind that's capable of strategy, deception, and planning, what does it all mean? It means the cuttlefish is way more than just another sea creature. It's a showcase for the pure, unbridled creativity of evolution. It's this living, breathing example of a totally different path to intelligence. One that blends a powerful mind with biological tech that honestly feels like something out of a sci-fi movie. And that really leaves us with one final fascinating thought. The cuttlefish just completely shatters our preconceived notions of what intelligence is supposed to look like. And if a creature this remarkable, this alien, exists in relatively shallow waters, it really makes you wonder, right? What other forms of brilliance, what other kinds of biological artistry are still out there waiting for us, hidden in the true dark depths of the ocean?
All right, today we're diving deep, really deep, into the world of a creature that's so intelligent, so bizarre, and just so cool. It almost feels like it's from another planet. We are talking about the alien genius in our own oceans, the cuttlefish.
So let me ask you this. What kind of animal do you know that can change its entire appearance in the blink of an eye, can learn new tricks just by watching, and has one of the biggest brains for its body size of any invertebrate on the planet? Yep, you guessed it. It's the cuttlefish. These guys are truly in a class of their own.
But here's the catch. For all that incredible brain power and ability, this is how long they get to use it. Just 1 to 2 years. That's it. It's this short, brilliant flash of a life, which, when you think about it, makes their complexity even more mind-blowing.
And we are not just talking about simple animal instinct here. Oh no. Studies have actually confirmed that they can learn just by observing what other cuttlefish do. They can watch, learn, and remember how to solve problems. That's a level of thinking we usually only talk about with mammals or birds. Okay, so let's get into the stuff that makes them seem so otherworldly. We're calling this section The Alien in Our Oceans because it's all about their incredible gift for disguise and, get this, some seriously clever deception. The secret to their magic trick lies in these amazing little things called chromatophores. Think of them like millions of tiny, pigment-filled balloons in their skin that they can inflate or deflate instantly to create any color or pattern. We're talking up to 200 of these per square millimeter. But here's the part that will bake your noodle. Cuttlefish are colorblind. So how on earth do they perfectly match the colors of their surroundings? Honestly, it's still one of the biggest mysteries about them. And they use this crazy ability for way more than just hiding. Check out how they handle mating. You've got your big, dominant males, right? They put on these dazzling, flashing light shows,
like a living billboard to attract a female. But then you have the smaller males, the sneaker males. These guys are clever. They'll actually disguise themselves to look and act just like a female. This lets them swim right on past the big flashy guys without a fight and sneak in a chance to mate. That's not just an instinct. That's a tactic. That's strategy. Which of course brings us back to those short lives. How do you cram so much living into such a tiny window of time? Well, that's what our next part is all about. A life lived fast. Their whole life is basically on fast forward. When they hatch, they're not little larvae, they're perfect miniature adults, ready to go. From there, their growth is explosive, and they hit maturity in just a matter of months. That leads into that intense, dramatic mating season we talked about. And then, pretty quickly after, their life comes to an end. It's this incredibly complex life, all lived at hyperspeed. So, okay, they're brilliant, they're masters of disguise, and they live these incredible, fast-paced lives. But what's their role in the bigger picture? Let's zoom out and take a look at their job as masters of the seafloor. Cuttlefish are what you might call the perfect middle managers of the reef. They are fantastic predators, hunting down crabs, shrimp, and small fish, keeping those populations in check. But at the same time, they're a super important meal for bigger predators like sharks, seals, and dolphins. They are a critical central link in the whole marine food web. And in that dangerous world of being both the hunter and the hunted, they have another superpower tucked away. Or, I guess, in their arms. Just like their cousins, the octopus and squid, if a predator manages to grab an arm, the cuttlefish can just regrow a new one. How amazing is that? Talk about resilience. So, where do we humans fit into the picture? Well, our relationship with these creatures is actually a really long and surprisingly complicated one, which brings us to our next section, Cuttlefish and Us.
For hundreds of years, we've had this very hands-on connection with them. If you've ever owned a pet bird, you've probably seen a cuttlebone in its cage for it to sharpen its beak. Well, that's literally the cuttlefish's internal shell. And you know that classic brown tint on old-timey photographs? That's called sepia tone. And the original dye was made from, you guessed it, cuttlefish ink.
But today, our interest is shifting from using parts of them to learning from them. It's way more advanced. Scientists and engineers are studying their skin right now to develop incredible new technologies. Things like adaptive camouflage for the military, or smart materials that can change their texture and color on command. We are literally trying to reverse engineer their natural genius.
Now, all this fascination has, of course, led some people to want to keep them in aquariums. But, and this is a big but, it is an enormous challenge. You're talking huge species-specific tanks, absolutely perfect water conditions, a very difficult diet of live or frozen food, and because they're so smart, they need an environment that keeps them stimulated, otherwise they get stressed. This is definitely not a starter pet.
And really, this quote says it all. Because they are so intelligent, so sensitive, and have such specific needs, keeping a cuttlefish healthy and happy in captivity is a job that should only be taken on by true experts.
And that brings us to our final and most sobering section. For all of their intelligence, for all their adaptability, cuttlefish are facing some really big dangers in our oceans today, leading them toward a very uncertain future. So what are they up against? Well, the two biggest threats are overfishing, which is pretty straightforward, and major habitat loss. In particular, they rely on seagrass beds to lay their eggs, and those beds are declining around the world. And of course, you can add general ocean pollution on top of all of that.
But here's the thing that's truly alarming. For a huge number of cuttlefish species out there, we just don't know. We don't have enough information to even say if their populations are healthy or in decline. They get classified as data deficient, which is a scary place to be. It means the species could be in serious trouble, and we wouldn't even know it until it's far too late. So I want to leave you with this question. Cuttlefish are incredible survivors. They are masters of adaptation, with an intelligence that truly feels alien to us. But if a creature this smart and this adaptable is struggling to navigate the world that we are creating, what does that say about the overall health of our oceans? And ultimately, what does it say about our own future? something to think about. All right, let's dive into the world of one of the ocean's most brilliant and, let's be honest, kind of bizarre inhabitants. We're talking about the cuttlefish. And believe me, this creature is an absolute marvel of evolution. So let's just start with a really bold question, because it gets right to the heart of what makes this animal so incredible. I mean, its abilities are so next level, they almost feel, well, alien. So let's dig in and find out why. Okay, so first things first, despite that name, the cuttlefish, it's not a fish at all. Nope, it's a cephalopod, so it's in the same family as the octopus and the squid. You know, that club of biological wonders. We're going to kick things off with its most stunning feature. I'm talking about its almost supernatural physical abilities. So, first up, the cuttlefish's incredible mastery of transformation. Seriously, you gotta think of it like it's wearing a living, intelligent cloak. And the secret to this whole thing? It all starts with its skin. And I'm not exaggerating here. A cuttlefish doesn't just change its color. It literally becomes its surroundings. It can mimic the hue, sure, but also the patterns, the contrast, and get this, even the three-dimensional texture of rocks or seaweed. It's a level of camouflage that is just mind-blowing. It almost defies belief. So you're probably wondering, how on earth does it pull off this incredible disappearing act? Well, the answer is basically a super high-tech biological system that's been perfected over millions and millions of years. Okay, so here's how it works. It all starts in the brain, which sends these lightning-fast signals out to the skin. These signals control thousands of teeny tiny muscles that either expand or contract little sacs of pigment. At the same time, other muscles are physically changing the skin's texture. So what's the result? You get a living, high-definition screen that can change in the blink of an eye. It's wild. But the physical marvels don't just stop at the skin. Oh no. Inside its body, it has something called the cuttle bone. Now, it's not a real bone. It's actually a porous internal shell. And by perfectly controlling the amount of gas and liquid inside of it, the cuttlefish can achieve perfect buoyancy. That means it can just hover effortlessly at any depth it wants. But listen, its incredible body is really only half the story here. As amazing as all those physical abilities are, what's going on inside its head? Well, that might be even more remarkable. So, let's dive into its hidden genius. Yeah, researchers have called it a master of tactical deception. And that pretty much says it all, right? We're not just talking about simple instinct here. This points to a real intelligence, one that's capable of strategy, of planning, and yeah, of actively outsmarting others. I mean, this is an animal that shows genuine problem-solving skills. For example, in lab tests, they've figured out how to navigate mazes to get a tasty snack. And out in the wild, they're constantly coming up with new plans to hunt their prey, to hide from predators, and they even use that amazing color-changing skin for some pretty complex communication. So if you look at their cognitive resume, it is seriously impressive. We're talking advanced problem-solving, strategic social behavior, but that last one, tactical deception, that's where things get truly mind-blowing. Here's a crazy example. A male cuttlefish can flash courtship patterns to a female on one side of his body, while at the exact same time showing female markings to a rival male on his other side just to avoid a fight. Come on, that's not instinct. That is pure strategic genius. But here's the paradox. For all of its incredible survival skills, this oceanic mastermind is facing some really unexpected and pretty significant challenges. You see, this master of adaptation actually has 3 core vulnerabilities that make it surprisingly fragile. First, they have really short lifespans. We're talking just a year or 2. Second, they need very specific habitats to be able to breed. And that brings us to the most critical point of all, their total and complete dependence on fragile coastal ecosystems. So here's the bottom line. The cuttlefish simply cannot thrive or even survive without healthy coastal waters. Things like pollution, the destruction of their habitats, and changes in water temperature, all of these pose a direct and severe threat. All that genius, it's just no match for a degraded environment. Okay, so this vulnerability obviously leads to a crucial question. What do we do? What's actually needed to protect this oceanic mastermind?
What we've seen is that the cuttlefish combines this absolutely unparalleled physical transformation with an advanced intellect that lets it outwit and outmaneuver pretty much everyone else in its world. It's truly a master of both its body and its mind.
And if there's one thing you take away from all this, let it be this. The fate of this super sophisticated, intelligent predator is completely linked to how we take care of our planet. Protecting the cuttlefish isn't really just about saving one cool animal. It's about preserving the entire coastal ecosystem that it calls home.
And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. The cuttlefish, through millions of years of evolution, has become a master of its world. So the question for us is, can we become masters of ours? Not by using camouflage, but by using the wisdom and the foresight to protect the only home we've got.